We'll call the Monday, January 30th, 2023 finance meeting to order at 10 o'clock. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay. Item number 2, minutes. Review of previous minutes. So these are minutes from June 3rd, 2022. Are there any questions or concerns?
I just got a question. What is capital operating?
That's what we're discussing today.
Okay, I just hadn't seen that, those two terms put together.
Okay. I just have a question from the minutes. I don't know if this is appropriate about the minutes or if we can ask it at the, when we're discussing the next bit, but it says in the minutes, there was a suggestion from Councillor Folds to put in an expression of interest to Thunder Bay DSEP for funding, for housing funding. So was that submitted or?
Yep, that was completed. We also, part of that was so the expression of interest was put in, which led to a meeting with Councillor Folds and I, meeting with a representative from Thunder Bay DSEP who suggested to do a senior survey, which was completed, and that's as far as we got on the project.
Okay. Okay, so do we approve the minutes?
No, this is a committee
It's
meeting.
just a committee meeting? Okay, all right. Number 3, finance, A, 2023 capital budget request. All right, so perhaps the CAO can go over the capital budget requests and.
So today's meeting is more of an education on how budgeting works within our municipality, which may not mirror other municipalities, but is similar. We run a capital and an operating budget. The capital budget, if you view operating, it's your day-to-day things, your utilities, your vehicle maintenance, your wages, so on and so forth, things we pay year after year, levies, and so on. Kind of almost things that we have an idea of what the costing is, applying inflation, reviewing previous years and ebbs and flows in increases and decreases, those type of things. Today, we're talking about the capital budget. The capital budget is something that is outside of the operating budget, meaning almost like one-time expenses or special expenses or things that are being requested that aren't covered by the operating budget. So the capital budget itself, the Township of Nipigon tries to operate our part of it, or our financial contributions to it, as around $400,000 and $450,000, which would be about 10% of our overall funds that we raise for the township yearly. That being said, if you look at the schedule itself and you look at the first column that says total project costs, right now the ask is 1.6 million. So we would be looking for 1.2 million in other revenue sources or funds. Or if we did this whole entire list, okay? So what I do each year is in October, I send out a request for operating budgets and capital requests to the department heads, and the department heads then, and our department heads are very good, is this list here is just a continuation year after year and taking the things off that they're approved of. So out of the 33 things here, there may be maybe 10% of it, 15% of it is actually new, something that came up in 2022 that they realized, but a lot of it is just continuation of other projects or requests from previous years. A lot of it is replacement. A lot of our assets are aging. A lot of our assets are in need of replacement. Some of these are wants, but some of these are we have to. If we go through the list, you'll see, we'll start with number 1, landfill site testing. This is something that's been going on for a number of years now, and I believe we're going to have discussions about this after this year about rolling it into the operating budget, because it is something that happens every year. So it's a study that looks at the flow of groundwater at the landfill site and making sure that with the garbage going into the ground, that the groundwater is not being contaminated. You'll see number 2, purchase of property for the landfill. That's something that's requested the last couple of years. Right now, we don't require it, but that's almost, you know, trying to foreshadow or predict the future of expanding our landfill site. Landfill sites are very expensive. And, you know, we identified through another study a purchase of the property for expansion landfill site. Landfill groundwater sampling, same thing. That's part of our certificate of approval. That's something we have to do. Again, we put it in the capital budget because it doesn't happen every year. Renison Street rehab, that there is a continuation of the stormwater management work that's going on up in the McCurdy area. That started, I believe, in 2013 with the rehabilitation of Churchill Street. We have a big problem with stormwater running down the hills. They deteriorate the shoulders of the road, they impact the stability of the roadway. They also, it also impacts people's properties with flooding. Renison also has had a number of water main breaks. When we identify road work, we try to identify a place where when we do lift the road, meaning taking the asphalt off and disturbing the base, that the infrastructure underneath can also be addressed at the same time. This Renison Street rehab is also, we want to revert back to the Public Works Department, our employees doing this type of work. I've spoken with them, they're more than confident. A lot of them are still around. The last major road rehabilitation Public Works undertook themselves was First Street. The road, they did an excellent job on it. It was a complicated project. It was a lengthy project. I believe we can revert to save the township some money by having our crew do this. We will need some design work. We'll need some project management on it. But in the end, you know, having our employees go up there and do the work, the excavation, the rehabilitation, I believe would be the best cost benefit for the township. McCurdy Avenue completion, again, this is a continuation of a 2-year project. This is year 3 up there. The project itself started with the Churchill Street rehabilitation. That was the entire stretch of Churchill being resurfaced, also kind of being angled differently. This would be a continuation of stormwater management, curbing, and other things to mitigate the water flowing down Churchill Street. Bell Street study, this is something that's been on the request sheet for about 5 or 6 years. There was an incident, or not an incident, but there was a little bit of infrastructure problems there about 8 years ago. This is something, again, that's not something that's imminent, but it is a request from the former Public Works superintendent to do a study on Bell Street in the area. They're talking about being affected is the 4-way stop with 4th Street, so the steep hill. Hospital sanitation design, we put this on the agenda now, or on the request sheet for 2 years, and that's based on the hospital and their announcement of an expansion. There, we would have to look at hooking up our sanitation. The design is quite expensive, as you can see, and I can let you know that there isn't much funding for designs or studies out there right now. But I've been in contact with the hospitals recently as late summer, and there's been no timeline put in yet for the expansion, so I don't know if this is a pressing issue to get done. But number 8 is the NCC generator. The Nipigon Community Center is our official evacuation center for us and some surrounding communities. With that being said, it is wired basically to hook up a generator to run the power to the facility. What Public Works Superintendent, the previous Public Works Superintendent is asking is to have a permanent generator placed there. We do have a mobile generator that would do the job right now. I would suggest not to even look at this point, as we already have a piece of equipment to run that center, but it's up to council if they want to look at a permanent generator there. So I'm going to skip over 9, 10, 11, and 12, and we'll go back to that. As you see, it's in the yellow. That's the water fund, but that's going to take a little bit of explaining. So let's skip down to 13, which is a columbarium. This has been on the request for capital for probably the last, I would say, at least 5 years. This is another columbarium for the cemetery. The current columbarium is about 60 to 65% full. The feedback we're getting is that the ones that are emptier on the roadside, the base of that columbarium needs to be addressed. Staff would recommend, or I would recommend, sorry, that right now, I would say we focus on getting the other columbarium a little bit more full and that base fixed before we go and purchase another one. Number 14, street sweeper. We are in works right now. We do have some prices on a secondhand street sweeper. 2022 Public Works Committee directed or sent a recommendation, to council to contract out street sweeping for the year, as our street sweeper had a former street sweeper had a really weird error in it that a company did diagnose it, and the cost of it was worth, or the cost of the fix was worth more than the actual machine itself. So that's gone to surplus. Last year, the recommendation from Public Works to council to street sweep was 15,000. That's what it cost us for the street sweeping last year. I'm confident we can get a street sweeper that will probably last us 3 to 5 years for 20,000. So the cost benefit there is self-explanatory. Number 15, 1 ton with a dump box. This is something that's been requested by Public Works for the last couple of years. We did have a 2.5 ton that was similar. That was put into surplus. It's another piece of the fleet that they're requesting. There is no funding for fleet. We moved down to recreation scoreboard. I believe it's the original scoreboard that's still there. It's dated. It's been identified as needing replacement. Accessing the lights to change them, the actual controls to control the scoreboard, it's in rough shape. 17 and 18 is just equipment for the gym. We do currently have those 2 pieces, but again, original pieces of equipment for our fit center. Number 19, new surface for tennis courts. We looked at this 2 years ago and found a product that you can lay over top of the asphalt, and it comes pre-designed, so it will have a pre-painted tennis court or pre-painted basketball court or both. Pickleball, I think it's called, was one of the things they brought up there. The only thing that the community and recreation manager and I worry about is if it would hold up in the winter. This isn't something that you can lift every fall to take out. This is something that we're just a little bit concerned, with the use of the outdoor rinks in that area and stuff, if this surface would hold up. But there is a request for the service. Currently, it's asphalt with the cracks being filled. The facility operators they blow out the cracks and fill it with crack seal, but it's deteriorating as well. Bleachers for ball fields. This is something that I would strongly recommend to council to maybe look at the very least. The bleachers are in rough shape. With the lifting of the COVID restrictions, I have an expectation that the softball leagues will start back up. The schools use them. The bleachers at the curling club, I think, are the original ones from the 70s. The ones at the hydro field on the other side are wood and have been breaking quite consistently. Pool sandblasting. Again, I would really recommend this to council for the simple fact that the paint on the bottom of the pool it's a very rubbery texture, and it breaks off in chunks, which then goes through our filtration system, which is new at the pool, and just big rubbery chunks going through a filtration system for water could cause potential damage. Sandblasting that off and applying new paint would mitigate that quite a bit, I would think. Diving board, again, my understanding is it's the original diving board there. The surface of it is again breaking and chipping. With the diving boards we're looking at are a little bit easily accessible. The step to this one, I believe, is about almost 18 inches high. The other one would be flush to the ground. NCC playground equipment. This again, is just replacing and updating some of the equipment that's at the NCC playground. The highway hometown hero signs, I just received a quote from a company out of Thunder Bay to replace the signs. Self-explanatory, they're pretty deteriorated. They are at the entryways of the Township of Nipigon. Councillor Gold always focused on the entryway to the Township of Nipigon, and this was one thing that was brought up multiple times. We would be looking at a better quality, not saying that the quality of the signs, they lasted a long time, but a better quality make of the signs that's reflective. 25 strategic plan. Again, that was directed by council. I've looked into it. I do have prices associated to it and timelines. Number 26, land asset plan for the marina. There, it's in at 20,000, received some information from Mayor Kuko that it's more close to 70,000 for the actual plan. Previously, in previous talks with previous council and budgets, we always kind of would look towards getting a timeline from Parks Canada, because we didn't want to go down and do a study or a plan, and then it kind of conflicted with what Parks Canada is doing down there. A design for phase 2 Bell Street building, I did engage a contractor in just very general talks, early last fall, late last summer. And they made a comment saying it'd be a lot better to see what you guys want to do there than just having a blank slate. So, a request from staff for a design for phase 2 Bell Street, so we can hand it out if we're doing an application. I believe that would put us closer to being, the term of being shovel ready for any projects that come forward. Photocopier scanner, this is something that we put in there. We have a lot of paper, a lot of big maps, a lot of things that we kind of want to, it takes up a lot of space. But again, this is just something that's in there. I wouldn't say it's a necessity at this point, but we did put the request in. Fire department, jaws of life, 18,500. I've been advised by the fire chief that due to the new material and the new equipment in the vehicles that are being made, both commercial and domestic, there's a requirement for a new type of jaws of life. Number 30, miscellaneous fire department equipment, 40,000. A lot of that can be absorbed in the operational budget that they're requesting. I could work with the fire chief on that type of stuff. Museum outside wall mural, 20,000. I'm assuming it's to replace the front mural on the museum itself. We do have a 3 of a 4-part study done on the building. We've done the occupational health and safety, we've done the fire inspection, and we've done the operational inspection. Now we just need to get the structural inspection that wasn't completed, but we'll get that done. I'd like to bring that to council afterwards. There may be some structural things that we'll have to address there, but I'll look for funding for this outside wall mural from the museum. I believe there's quite a bit of funding for that type of stuff. And then miscellaneous museum, again, I think it's similar to the fire department. A lot of it can be worked into the operational budget, maybe over the next year or two. And then the library, that I put that on there just to show you the library does ask for capital requests. That money will come out, and that's covered in their reserve fund. So that's the capital request from staff this year. If there's any questions.
I just wanted to talk a little bit maybe about some funding opportunities, particularly for a lot of the recreational items. There is a capital fund coming up in June 14th. I know that doesn't really help us for this summer, but from the Trillium Foundation for a maximum of $150,000 for purchase of equipment, improving community spaces and facilities. So even though I don't think it includes rolling stock, like a Zamboni or something like that, it would probably include a lot of this stuff, including the generator and scoreboard and all that kind of thing. So that's definitely something we can look at for sure. Like I said, it doesn't help us with this summer, but because it takes probably about 3 months to get it from the deadline to the approval.
May I ask, Kelly, there's some items here that you know of that there's potential funding?
Yep.
That they're kind of important, and there's possibilities to apply for funding?
Yeah, there's some there that we also have yearly funding we receive. So if you could see where the green is on item number 4, we receive AMO gas tax. There's already $100,000 funding towards that project.
I guess these are all approved ones that you have on here that you're showing under funding.
But the funding that's there, there's 2 of them that are yearly. So you'll see the green is gas tax, the red is OCIF. Those are yearly funds we receive that we have to kind of budget for. There's only certain things you could use those funds for, which is roads and assets, a lot of the assets. So we kind of have a predetermined idea, because there is a a 3 to 5 year plan for rehabilitation of a lot of our assets. The pink, or sorry, the peach color, that's just internal debt. We would basically borrow money from ourselves to pay that over a certain amount of time. The ones that are in white under the second last column, that coming from the reserve fund. We would take that from our reserve fund. And then again, you see the peach down there, the wall mural, that again would be a debt.
So things like our strategic plan, is there potential funding for that?
Yeah, I believe I sent out an email that I had spoken with a funder on that.
I thought,
And-
yeah,
And we talked about the March 31st, their year end is March 31st. So, I mean, I've spoken to them a few times about it. I would be confident that we would be able to get that, rolling.
okay, and what about the design phase for Bell Street?
There's very little money for studies or designs out there right now. That would be something that we would be taking out of our general fund. That's the 400 to 450,000 I was referring to earlier, that the township basically pays out of our general fund. Out of the
Okay.
4.5 million, 4.3 to 4.5 million we raise in taxes, revenues, operating grants and so on.
And are there other sources besides the Trillium Fund for recreation?
Yeah, there's sources. What I'm trying to do today is trying to narrow this down to what council wants us to focus on, for application wise in that. So today, like I said, that's more of an education. I understand we have a generally new council here, to kind of get you thinking about what the priorities are, and then we would focus on funding. That was for the next meeting. I was gonna bring and show you all the funding options for what we're looking at. Generally, like I said, I put out there landfill site testing, there's no funding. Purchase of property, there's no funding. Landfill groundwater sampling, no funding. Renison Street rehab, I showed that there's some funding available. Same with the McCurdy completion. The Bell Street study, I highly doubt I'll find funding for that. The hospital sanitation design, highly doubt. NCC generator, I don't think I'd find funding for that. I'll get back to the water stuff. And then so on and so forth. Columbarium, I highly doubt I'll find funding for it. The 2 rolling stock, absolutely not. The recreation stuff, there is funding out there for recreation. There is quite a bit of funding out there for recreation. Down to the signage, I doubt I'll find funding for that, but I mean, we could look. Strat plan, I know there's funding. Plan asset management plan, I would say there's probably funding if there's funding for the strategic, the design, highly doubt. Photocopier, probably not. Fire department, we've had these discussions, there's really no funding for emergency services. The museum, the outside wall mural, I think so, because, you know, you can look at it as heritage, historical, we could find funding for that. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it, unless council has, I have some other things to add that could be potential, so. The 33 items you got is probably 33 of about 120 requests we received. But a lot of the requests are either dated, so within those requests, you'll see installation of water and sewer to the highway. You'll see, I don't know, new roof at the old municipal office, those type of things. You know, council wants, I can give them the whole 125. Here's the issue with capital. Usually, well, especially since COVID, we would introduce our capital in November. Just to the fact that you can't, materials purchasing, getting contractors is just, everything is so delayed right now. I'm trying to expedite this so we can get these things underway, because I'm not sure if we could get a lot of this stuff in time. As you've seen from the ICIP project, there's maybe on council. So with the ICIP project for the arena, there was 2 parts left to finish the canteen, to get the canteen up and running. One was a little valve and the other one was some type of piping thing. We almost had to fly someone down to Toronto to go and get it, because it wasn't coming, and there was a push to get our canteen going. So that worries me when it comes to projects and getting things in place. Some other potentials that I marked down was a donation to the Rendezvous Ski Club for a new snow machine. Last year, for the first time that I remember, we had in the budget a donation to the Thunder Bay Regional for the cardiovascular center. The Rendezvous Ski Club is working on using a very old snow machine. There's that type of capital request that can come forward. Improve lighting at the Nipigon Curling Club. Right now, we're waiting quotes on it. The lighting is becoming an issue on the ice surface. Floating docks at the marina, that's on the request, but again, I'm not, if we're gonna look at a land asset management plan for the marina, buying things before we get expert advice on what we should be doing down there I don't think is the best practice. Complete the break wall at the marina. So we did 80% of the break wall with the idea of keeping a section kind of open to see about the flow. We're observing it again this year. The ice, basically it's kind of from keeping the ice from coming into the bay and having effects on our main dock. Matters Road Bridge Study. This is something that the former Public Works Superintendent always had in place, looking at replacing the Matters Road Bridge. Auto X truck at the fire department. Again, that's just fleet replacement. Sidewalk trackless machine. You could see that we have a pickup truck that plows our sidewalks. It's not the best practice. And then a kiosk at the Bridgeview Lookout. So last year, I believe, with Superior Country leaving to go to a different location, we had nothing at the Tourist Information Center. Council had me look at doing a few things, doing nothing. This is for tourism, doing nothing, looking for funding, or looking at our assets to see if there's anything we could use. Do nothing obviously is never an option really. I looked at funding. There was funding available, but the funding that was available would have got us a four-sided bus stop, like a glass bus stop. That wouldn't complement that area at all, and it wouldn't have came in until October or November. So then we looked at our assets, and one of the suggestions we received was from the old Tourist Information Center, which is now the Marina Kiosk building. So council directed us to do a study to see if it was feasible. Well, after the first phase of the study, it was not feasible at all because of the cost of the services to relocate it. So that right there, the prices I got on that at the time was about 60,000 for basically a tourist. I would say a tourist hub center, but it's not. Not that it's a bad looking building, but it would resemble the Rotary booth. And I'm not sure if that there is plans that were drawn up when the Bridgeview Tower was built for a building to complement it. I've never seen those plans, but I've been advised that they're there. So at the time for that kind of booth that I explained was 60,000. I just finished meeting with the company that's doing our new asset management plan, and across the board, on average, the raise to replace assets right now add 25% to anything that you priced last year. So that 60,000 goes up to about 82,000. So those are the other potential ones that I kind of earmarked to put out to council for funding if interested, or if council has anything they'd like to add.
I just, if anyone else.
I don't know, just, the only thing Kelly was on the purchase of property for the dump.
Yeah.
Would that be in the same area?
Yeah.
And you could keep your permit would fit over, you wouldn't have to do like,
No,
you see those other communities having nothing but grief.
Yeah.
Getting permits and everything.
we're set up good right now, like, and it fluctuates from like 110 years down to 90 years, back to 115 years for a current landfill site. What we're worried about is basically the garbage blowing out, or say a land water study or groundwater study comes back and it's going out. We're trying to mitigate
Yeah.
anything that might come on. Right now, I would say we're in really good shape, but we're trying to mitigate anything that potential stuff. But again, as I noted, that's not something that I'm suggesting for this year.
Councilor Sakamoto and then Councilor.
Just one kind of half statement, half question. I don't see anything related to the new subdivision between Greenmantle and Harkness. I can see on the land registry website that the subdivision is showing there, but it's not actually showing the lots. But I wondered, and I have no idea how much money is involved in getting that up to date. Just thinking in terms of our town growing and expanding our tax base, if we have a potential new business, but we don't have any new homes, but we want to get those people living here. That was, so has there been any look at that? Is any of that on the longer list?
Yeah, that's on the longer list. We did a study, we had an engineer look at it, so one expansion. So to expand to 2 lots from the current expansion, because from the end of the residential section on Harkness to the beginning of the residential section on Greenmantle, so we'll call that the gravel road. There is no mains, there's no sewer mains, water mains, nothing there. To put that in, at our cost would be well over $1.5 million. To service 2 lots there at this time, I believe was about $150,000. Just because we don't have any services in there. We've done multiple studies, we've had, I believe, I am aware of 2 potential investors that looked at that area that, we worked with, to look at, developing the lots. I believe there's 27 buildable lots there. Yeah, on the stretch, so we're talking about both sides of the road. And at that time, council, you know, if someone comes in there and builds lots and wants to buy a subdevelopment, they're responsible for all costs. They're responsible for putting in the services, they're responsible for all of it.
So in an alternative, because if you're looking at somebody just building houses, do we have a list of buildable lots that are serviced in town?
Yes,
Do we? Okay.
yes.
Good. Awesome. And Councilor Rickman.
Yeah, thanks. Kelly, just with regards to the hospital sanitation design, I know that's in response to long-term care facility expansion at the hospital there. And I'm just thinking there's a pumping station that would be required for that project. Is that true?
Depends on how you want to do it. There's 2 options to it. There'll have to be upgrades to certain services. I don't believe a pumping station for the sewage itself. The 2 options are to run it along Hogan Road or to come off of First Street, kind of along the thing there. But again, those are what the studies will determine to tell us.
Okay,
But again, I'm trying to coordinate that with the hospital. I've always, since I've taken over as CEO, and Lindsay was very good at doing this. I don't like putting the cart before the horse. I like to wait for others to show us. Because there's other things that on the list, again, to bring it up, is the resurfacing of Hogan Road. I mean, if they're doing this big expansion of the hospital, and even currently, I know what Herb Council holds quite a bit, that the roadway in front of the hospital is gravel. It's not complimentary to an amazing facility. We got to the point where when you go over, you'll see there's booths and there's education centers, and council had went down and they got educated on an alternative road surface. So instead of asphalt, it was more of an epoxy mixed with grindings. We have a bunch of grindings we keep all of the stuff that comes out of our roads when it comes to gravel and old asphalt, and to put a surface on that, because it's not a highly traveled road, so it's not excessive. There's not heavy machinery going down it. So that road would, in our estimation, would hold up. It's just expensive. I mean, just like anything else, right? And I don't think it would be fair to the taxpayers who live down that road, who pay quite high taxes, if you stop the paving right at the hospital. I think the best practice would be do the entire road. And again, too, you know, stormwater management is at the forefront. It would allow you then to properly ditch and manage stormwater, especially with the creek running down there, so.
yeah, just further to that, Kelly, I remember when I was on council before, we talked about 1/4-inch gravel and tar, similar to what they have on Camera Falls Road. That might be an option for Hogan Road.
Yeah, so this product or this type of paving I'm talking to is an evolution of that. It's more environmentally friendly, and it's also supposed to be more, it's supposed to work better in our climate. We haven't had an example of it anywhere yet, but that's what the sales pitch was, so.
So we've all seen Camera Falls Road and how well that holds up. The other point I was gonna just ask, like, water, is there water? I'm not sure if it's sewer, but is there water up to the Gerlach's service station currently?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
there was a line put in.
There was a line for that.
Yep.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
so just about the hospital for $60,000, the plan there. I'm not sure how far along the hospital is with their, if they're applying or whatever, but I think that would be worth looking at just to think about being shovel ready for projects, and when we were at Roma, they all talked about being shovel ready for things, right? So, you know, if we can get that design done, maybe this year, we'll see, I don't know if it's in the budget, but if that can get done next year, in a year or two, when that funding comes, we're, you know, that's in place and it's ready for the hospital to do that expansion. So if they're waiting for that study, then they might lose out. That's what I just worry about.
Yeah, just further to that, Mayor Kupo, I'm on the hospital board,
Oh,
and we're actually having a meeting tonight, so I can keep, through myself and Kelly, we can keep, council informed as what's happening there.
okay, so that's good to know. And then, just my other comment about the lookout, building and all that kind of thing. Yeah, that's a lot of money, $60,000 for something like that, which I personally don't really think is required up there. I think perhaps I would suggest using the Edge Arts as kind of a visitor information area, especially if we applied for a student for the summer to work out of there. And I noticed in the minutes from the last budget that former Mayor Harvey was interested in seeing a gift shop there. And so if you have a visitor, sort of someone dealing with visitors there and having a gift shop there, I know there's some like a map up there that has the Edge Arts on the panel, whatever you call it. So, you know, adding a little like visitor center thing down on that would be helpful. And then we don't have to spend $60,000 on a whole new, and there's not a lot of room up there. You don't want to clutter it with too many things. So that's just my suggestion.
And maybe we could get Edge Arts making some money.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else have any other?
So I'll move on to the water part of it. So water is capital as well, but we do have a water plan. So if you've seen over the last 7 to 8 years, you'll see incremental water increases come in 10 to 15% increments, and usually. And this council will be aware every time water is raised, our residents, you know, are asking why. The water, basically, to put it in very simple terms, the revenue that we raise in water is supposed to operate our water system. So it's supposed to equal out. That means paying for upgrades, paying for the operations, but also paying for the employees to operate it. So we also capitalize within our capital budget a water part that doesn't come out of the $400 to $450,000 amount. We try to set that anywhere between 120 to 150,000. That all depends again on things we have to do, but also what our water revenues are reflecting after the year. So if we have a little bit of surplus, we will add that to the capital, because there's always upgrades. Our water plant is very pieced together. It wasn't all built at the same time. There's always something that's dated, always something that requires replacement. So to bring those ones forward, chlorination system, $50,000. There's a $10,000 internal debt on that. But that's something we have to do. That's something that we're required to do. So that $50,000, that project has to be done. The Vipond flow test and hydrants, the water main relining, that's a continuation of the project that's been going on. That started 9th Street up Railway. Last year, you've seen it was down Railway Street. This would be a continuation. And what happens is the lining is put inside the water main. Not because the water main is broken or anything, but through studies and through cameraing and through observation, it's building almost like rust pockets on the inside. And what this does is it lines it. So if there is a potential break of the exterior casting, the water won't leak. And it's been working great. That's something we're suggesting to continue. PLC for cloth filter. Again, that's something that we're looking at doing. Again, it's not something that we've been ordered or required to do. And then the Vipond flow test and hydrants. This is something that's been on that capital request for the last 3 years. And what that basically is a company comes down, they do flow testing on all our fire hydrants, and then they're painted a different color, which then makes the fire department aware of how much the flow is out of each hydrant for fire suppression. I've spoken to not the current chief, not even the chief before, but the chief before that. He suggested at the time that because of the design of the new trucks, the trucks have such a strong pump inside that they can push the water out pretty hard. And I spoke with Public Works, the foreman, maybe a week or two ago about it, and he didn't believe that that was something that, you know, was pressing to have the hydrants painted, you know, different colors on the flow rate. So that's the water suggestion. The suggestion from staff is the chlorination system and the water main relining. It'll take a little bit of internal depth, but again, you know, the chlorination system is required, and it would be nice to continue the water main relining, which could possibly mitigate, you know, water breaks, which, you know, could really bump those numbers up quite significantly, unexpectedly.
Can you explain again, sorry, Kelly, the PLC for the cloth filter?
That's just something to, and you know, you gotta excuse my ignorance. I'm not 100% familiar with the water systems and stuff, but the PLC for the cloth filter is basically an upgrade from the current system. I did look back on capital requests. This has been requested for 2 or 3 years. I don't recall any conversations with Public Works Superintendent Aiken saying that this was something that was pressing or anything. So I think it's just a request to continue to modernize our water plant.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Sakamoto.
So so those items that you have listed under the water fund right now will all fit within the expected revenue?
Nope,
Oh,
nope. No, that's why I'm suggesting the water main relining and the chlorination system.
okay.
And we'll have to take on internal debt to stay at the water revenue amount that we're forecasting is available.
Something that I forgot to mention here for the fire. The item that wouldn't be covered, the jaws of life, sorry. At Broma, I came into contact with the municipal representative from Enbridge, and it's Kristen Oliver. They mentioned that Enbridge does have funding for volunteer fire protection for equipment and things like that. Now, I'm not gonna get everybody's hopes up because they said that just not anybody can apply, you have to be asked to apply. So, I will get that contact information and send it to our CAO, and it doesn't hurt to try. That's what, $18,000, right? Yeah, so.
Yeah, just further to that, I know Enbridge has been very supportive of Dorian, for example,
Mhm.
in some of their asks.
For their firefighting?
I'm not sure about the firefighting, but other items, like community events and things like that too.
Okay, does anyone have anything further? Just, sorry, just going back to my notes here, some suggestions for the land asset management plan I had for funding was the home after red. They only come in at 30% and they're competitive, but that's a possibility there. And we could also talk to Parks Canada about that as well. They're gonna be building that building down there, and I'm assuming they're knowing what's happening down there on their part. I think they're only concerned with what's going on, not only concerned, but they'll be using their area. The docks and all, and that type of area, the finger docks and everything. I think that's more our kind of responsibility, but they might be interested in helping with some planning on that end. It's only going to improve the water access, and I know that's a priority for them, is to improve water access points in the Lake Superior North Shore conservation area. So it doesn't hurt to talk to them and see if they can contribute to that as well.
Maybe we could get our portion down to 20,000.
Yeah, exactly. And I personally feel that plan should be done before we really go into like millions of dollars worth of projects to rebuild a dock or so I just think it's really important that we plan out, particularly with Parks Canada being down there now, like look at, everything that they would require to.
I'll leave a lot of that when I see a shovel in the ground and they're moving. I've been hearing that story since 2005.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2009.
We have records from 2001.
Oh,
Yeah.
there.
So I'll run down just a quick breakdown of how the operational or how the capital budget works. So I did mention that, you know, we operate an operational budget, which is day-to-day expenses. And with, those are the expenses you kind of know. That's generally when council imposes a levy rate is based on the rising costs of operating due to inflation, aging infrastructure, inefficient operations, or wage increases. As you know, we have a collective bargaining agreement with our unionized employees that calls for a wage increase each year. The capital budget request from department managers, staff, and council for project studies, equipment, and fleet that is capital in nature and is outside of the daily operations of the municipality. But the capital budget usually does impact the operational budget since it can be funded municipally through general operating funds and taxes. So an example of that would be the Public Works Department requesting a new non-licensed piece of equipment, so such as a grader, backhoe, bulldozer. And acquiring that piece of equipment is a capital expense, so that would be in the list that I provided to you today. But it will have an impact on your future operational expenses, because each year now you gotta pay for, you know, the servicing, you know, the inspections, possibly the safeties, those type of things. On non-licensed vehicles, you don't require safeties, but on any fleet that's licensed, all that comes now and is part of your operational budget, so it automatically increases your operational budget. That's why you see our equipment, we try to operate it for at least 10+ years, because it allows you to try to, you know, maintain a stable operating budget. We're very diligent in not incurring new expenses for the operational budget unless a previous expense is either removed or reduced. So going back to that piece of equipment, we don't keep 2 graders, we get rid of one, but when it's done, and we fill that operating expense with the new one. So an example of 2022 or 23 capital budget is a request for the new street sweeper. As I said, we contracted it out. It was $15,000 just for last year. The Public Works Department has located a good used street sweeper for around $20,000. We still have to inspect, but there's still some stuff we have to go through. And having an operational street sweeper that we own, the operating budget is lowered as the debt incurred will be spread across a number of years. So we'll take internal debt on that, or we'll purchase it outright from our operating fund. And instead of paying a lump sum of $15,000, and if you take that 25% increase on operations that the asset management planning company told us, that'll increase to, you know, $16,800 for outside contractor to perform. So either you buy a piece of equipment for $15,000 to $20,000 that you'll have over the next 3 to 5 years, or you pay this amount every year to get your street sweep. On occasion, some repetitive capital item requests are included in the operating budget. Again, I mentioned this, the $10,000 Public Works landfill site testing. We'll look at this about possibly sliding it into our operational budget. That'll mean an increase to our operational budget of $10,000. But this is stuff that we require for, you know, maintain our certificates at certain locations and so on and so forth. Process for providing council with a list of capital requests. I've touched on this already. We receive the request, staff prioritize, meaning I basically say to the department heads, prioritize, tell me, we say 3 things, the have tos, the want tos, and the like tos from each department. And then, for example, item number 5, McCurdy Avenue completion is a capital request to complete the stormwater management project. I said this to the last council, I'll say this to this council over and over again. Stormwater management is going to be at the forefront of everything here very soon. It is going to be expensive. It's going to require a lot of administration work, and the work itself is expensive as well for the infrastructure. So that's to finish off the rehabilitation of Churchill Street. So all that work that was done up on McCurdy, the back lane adjacent to my house, and everything all ties together. Churchill and McCurdy, the back lane. It all ties up, and councilors that, or Mackenzie, you were involved when they cut that swath of bush out at the top of the laneway next to my house. The runoff from the highway was coming down and causing significant water damage to the intersection, to people's homes, to the shoulder of the road going down Churchill. And the water wasn't managed at all. Every spring you would see piles and piles of fill and gravel in people's yards down that way. And I don't know how many times Public Works had to go out there and fill up people's driveways because they were being washed out. So that should be mitigated hopefully with this project. So costs, each request submitted for consideration for the yearly capital budget must be as accurate as possible. Staff submitting the costs are required to research the request. Like I said, I give out the capital operating budget in October. So there's a significant amount of time or enough time for them to start costing these projects. They go out and they research the request, they request quotes, and in some instances forecast potential additional costs using their experience and knowledge. Because the costs are received early in the year and are likely estimates, the actual cost may be slightly higher or lower due to a number of factors, including availability, as I explained, inflation, etc. Staff is advised to budget accordingly, take all factors into consideration. The final columns you'll see on the budgets or the capital budget request schedule are general fund and reserve internal debt. These are the township's financial contributions to the capital budget. The general fund, which is the final column, is the amount from the current year taxes and operating budget. The township's goal is to contribute between 400 and 450,000 towards capital projects, with the cost differences being covered by grants, internal debt, and reserve funds. Once the capital budget is approved, staff may be required to apply for funding that is applicable for each project. Many projects and circumstances, filing application for funding may be absolutely necessary prior to or in advance of finalizing the overall budget. So what that means is we're already in the course of investigating, developing grants. I have a number of grants that are written sitting on my computer, and once council approves the projects, then they get sent, and the ones that don't get approved just go into a file and maybe for next year. An example would be a request for a strategic plan. So if the council approves that request, staff will then apply to the funding agency for funding to assist in the project. Please be advised that to date, there is no funding available for or equipment. Council will also see the water capital fund, which I just explained. Although including the capital budget, this can be found in yellow in the last column. The water fund usually is around 120 to 150,000. This is based on water revenues from water billing, and the money is used exclusively. So the money that you pay in your water goes exclusively to water assets and operations, and to improve drinking water assets or for studies associated to improving drinking water assets. So that's the breakdown of the capital budget.
Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, just further to that, thank you, Kelly, that was very interesting. I know the township has been pretty good at, like with fleet purchases, not doing them all at the same time, right? Right. So your fleet purchases over a number of 5 or 6 or 7 years, whatever, so that's been very well handled in my opinion there. And then just getting back to the top of Churchill Street.
Yep.
Perhaps we can put that to our new public works superintendent or at our next public works meeting there. I know in the past, and they had the Girl Guides plant trees there to try to prevent erosion. I got a call a couple of days later that 90% of the trees have been pulled out by the roots. So I had to go back and plant them all. And then trying to keep, I know the township was good. They put up some fencing to try to keep people off of that area that had been tree planted. And the fencing's all come down. So I think, we'll put that, if that's okay with council, we can put that item to Public Works and maybe address it this year. Yeah.
To further that, there is a study that was completed, and we do have it to actually mitigate the water runoff down there with almost and I don't want to use the word because it's not, but a rain garden type. The study also shows what type of planting should be up there that would absorb. So I can have that with the new public works superintendent for the next meeting.
Yeah, I know with the tree species that we did plant there, I did a little bit of research to make sure that it all fit the site there. So yeah, that'd be good. Thanks, Kelly.
Just adding to that, yeah, with our cold water brook trout streams, they don't like road salt. So the more things like rain gardens we can do, divert runoff water into the soil, it's better for our brook trout.
So what are the next steps for the operating budget? Like, how does
Well, I would
Let's
like,
move forward.
I'd like to finalize the capital budget before we even start the operating.
Oh,
Just so I can,
I didn't capital, sorry.
I can get going on these projects. I'd like council to take this for the next, at least the very minimum week. I would prefer probably 2 weeks. To just look over it, and that, and then at the next meeting. I'm gonna bring, and we already do have finalized, I just didn't wanna confuse today with council, or almost feel like council was being instructed to do these projects that we've already identified. That would meet the 400 to 450,000. Again, you know, as I said to the previous council, on almost at some point, every finance meeting, it's unfortunate, but there's a lot of have-tos we do that aren't something that directly benefits everybody in Nipigon to the naked eye. A lot of it is underground infrastructure, a lot of it is, you know, things that, for example, the landfill site testing, you know, there's no direct real benefit to our residents. We've always tried to, you know, put funding forward for the circus to come here and stuff like that. But right now, with the rising costs and everything, and at the same time, our assets really aging and getting in some rough shape. I'm bringing forward basically the meat and potato schedule, unfortunately, for things that need to get done. Again, it'll be council's final decision, but I'd like you for the next week or two, kind of look at the schedule, ask me any questions that you need to ask. At the same time, you know, moving on, I don't want to step on any feet here, but to go to 3B, the public consultation, that all depends on how council wants to handle that part of it.
Can I just,
Councillor Sefton.
I'm thinking, for me anyway, it would be nice to see what in your wisdom, in your position, think we can, what the short list would be.
Yeah, and I'll send that to you over the next couple days, but I wanted you to see,
Yeah,
you know, the priorities here first, like, and I'm going by what Councillor Pelche said at the last meeting that I was at is, you know, to have council, even when a strategic plan, sit here and decide on 4 or 5 things, you know, it's kind of more or less, you know, agreeing on these are the priorities. So we're transparent with the community. And the reason why, you know, we're doing the projects we're doing.
I think for me, I don't know about anyone else, but it would just be helpful to sort of maybe color code the have-tos. And then from that, like, let's say the have-tos amount to $300,000.
Yeah.
So really, we have $100,000 or $150,000 to work with, right? So I just think that maybe if that was sort of established, and then we know what we know what our wish list is a little bit more.
and that's why if there's potential, like to get some funding for the scoreboard, some optimistic that you think that it's a good potential to work it in.
So what I'll provide is, and we have a schedule, Sam, we pretty much have a schedule done out that the priorities, the have-tos right now will lead up your 400 to 450.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's just the way things go. But I also have another schedule for the things that we would like to do to show, you know, where there's funding available for it and so on and so forth. And maybe some of the have-tos, we can find some funding. And then that would bring in, you know, some $10,000 expenses or, you know, $20,000 expenses that we can absorb if we can find, you know, some funding for the have-tos.
Anything else about the budget? And then we can-
I guess, I don't know, in regards to, Cal, we have nothing here on this budget that has been money being put aside, like steps, like so much a year to offset the cost.
Yep, that's our reserve funds. We put away our reserve funds. So basically, in our reserve funds, the money is spent.
Yeah,
We don't have, it's not sitting there saying, but the money in there technically is applied to, you know, the road rehabilitations and so on and so forth. So there's money that is, the whole reserve fund is broken out for future costs and expenses.
but not itemized, like say we put $50,000 ahead for roads or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we put in money every year. I can't, off the top of my head, I
Yeah.
can't tell you, but like, there's money put in every year for fleet replacement at the fire hall, because there's no money.
Right.
So when we bought the last fire truck, that was a combination of municipal funds, their reserve fund and that, and we had to wait until a certain dollar amount. right?
Yeah.
And as soon as we got word that there was two fire trucks sitting, I believe in Ottawa, that municipalities defaulted on, meaning they didn't buy them. It fit that amount we had, right? And we were very, very fortunate to get that fire truck. Multiple, and I mean multiple municipalities asked us how we ended up getting that fire truck for the cost we did, because we have that put away. One easier example of that, as you'll see in the capital budget, is if we go down the library, she's asking for a new photocopier. Sumi's had that last photocopier 10 years. She now has enough in a reserve fund to pay for that photocopier. So that's how we manage and maintain, you know, not having huge tax increases, is by sometimes saying, you know, things we'd love to do are farther down the list than the things we have to do.
Yeah. Totally, yeah. Okay.
Councilor McKenzie?
Yes, and Kelly, and further to that with the library, wasn't, like the money that was put into the reserve fund, wasn't that from donations, right?
It's from all types of revenue. So what we do is we ensure that she has enough, or sorry, the library has enough for their operating.
Mhm.
And then any surplus in that we stick into the reserve fund. So, you know, that 6,500 might have been made up over 5 years, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And then once you got to that point, the librarian and the library board notices there's enough money there to buy something, and they put in the capital request to spend it.
Okay, so is everyone okay to move on with the
Yes.
public consultation bit? Okay, do we have any comments about that? Councilor McKenzie?
Yeah, I agree that we need time management is very important for not only for us, but for our staff. And perhaps if we are gonna have a public consultation, it could be, say, an hour and ahead of a regular council meeting, something like that, so people are already coming to that, staff and council are already coming to that meeting, but we could all go maybe an hour ahead or something.
And I think that this is helpful, this discussion that we're having, because we're new, so Kelly's had to explain everything completely to us and read everything out, and I think this is being recorded and probably posted, so people will have an idea, but not everyone, of course, is online and everything, so. I think really like it's not like what's gonna happen is whatever the majority of the people say is what we spend the money on. I think it's more about, having people understand what we have to deal with here, and so there'll be a little bit more understanding if they know what we have to prioritize and what we really need, because a lot of the infrastructure that we have to do is not visible underground or whatever. They just don't understand how much money it costs. So I think a town hall is just to start off with. Maybe next year we do an online and a town hall or something like that. When we have more time to sort of, because we've just been elected in November, so. Yeah, I think just a quick town hall where people can come out and ask questions and I mean, I would be able to attend for sure. I think it's important that at least a couple of council and maybe a couple of staff are there to talk, and I don't know if it would be like a little short presentation, just, showing what we have to deal with, and then discussion and note taking, yeah.
And my only suggestion, and it's, compared to what Kelly said when they did the online survey. We should have questions should be written and vetted by somebody first to make sure that they're appropriate. And they're not just slanderous, just to make sure people can't just stand up and get their feelings about people off their chest.
Right, yeah.
One thing, I've done these before in my previous positions, it could become a nightmare. You're gonna get people that are gonna be coming in, oh, we need this, we need that, we need this, how come they got that? And that's the downside of it all, although it's very transparent and good. But you're gonna be surprised how much rejection you'll get into something like that. It's unfortunate, like I say, I've done it a few times and they were awful.
And well, and sometimes those things can be quelled when you're face to face with somebody, and it can be explained to them why we can't do that this year, or why can't you just get funding for that? And people don't understand, as Kelly said, there's no funding for rolling stock. You can't get funding for a truck.
Yeah.
So if that's completely explained, sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, haters gonna hate sometimes, right? But I think I think it'll be helpful for people that, wow, we're actually being consulted about the budget. This is good. I think there's a comfort there for the taxpayers that they, you know, their voices have been heard. So.
I think the point of setting a time limit, so an hour before a meeting. And again, having the questions in writing, that somebody looks at them and throws out the ones that are not appropriate to the discussion, I think would be.
And in the evening too, so that everyone,
Yeah.
even people who attend the, CEO Peckman.
I wouldn't recommend having this meeting before a council meeting, because it does get contentious, then the council meeting doesn't get set off the right. I would probably say I would suggest designate a certain night, to do it. I would separate the two out. That's just my suggestion. I looked into this. It's some pretty easy information to find on there. Even some municipalities next to us with the online surveys, they barely got anybody interested. But I would say that if you plan on having a town hall, to separate it from any other meeting you're having. That's just my suggestion.
And Kelly, you said you talked to other municipalities about what they've done at their town hall, and what, I wonder if they have like a system in place that worked for them. Like, I know that you can have, you know, papers on the wall with all the priorities, and then people can put dots on where they think the priorities are, or there could be a presentation and then formal questions, or it could just be a gathering. I've never been to one, so I'm not sure how it could work, but.
My suggestion would be to have an information period, take a break, and then have a Q&A. But have the Q&As put in prior to the break, with the people attending. And then pick the questions that are applicable, not why isn't my road being paved? Why is certain people doing this, or he's only getting this, or she's getting, you don't want any of that. You want the questions to reflect clarification, the information you're providing in the first part of the session.
Yeah.
Set the mood, bring coffee, donuts, and try to incorporate as many people as you can. That's why I suggested possibly even meeting with the service clubs. They're very active people in our community. It'll be repetitive meetings, because a lot of the service clubs have all the same members. Or, you know, one member is on multiple service clubs. You could do that. It's the advertisement and getting the information out there to try to get people engaged. We did that with it's a little bit off topic, but the last town hall I was involved in, we did it with the off-road vehicles. There was a huge outcry. I think we had 7 people show up to the meeting, and we pushed that big time with the OPP. So, you know, it's again trying to get the information, get people that engaged to come in there and have a positive effect on budget discussions, not to come in with.
Councillor Sakamoto.
I would say I'm leaning towards, if we're saying the one meeting versus the multiple meetings. Do we have somebody in our town that makes a good meeting facilitator? Look at the candidates. We had the gentleman from the radio station that did a good job in keeping things in line. Do we have somebody in our town that's been used from time to time as a good?
Right here. We're elected to do
I
this.
wouldn't mind doing it. I wouldn't mind.
We're elected to be that person. We bring somebody in and then we'll be getting one, why is he there, not you guys?
It would be tricky just to facilitate the meeting. We're still there talking, but they're just taking the questions, making sure if things start to get out of hand. We may not, as counselors, we might get ourselves in trouble if we.
Oh, no. I wouldn't feel comfortable presenting the budget. I think that's something that Kelly should do, because I don't.
Oh, yeah, not even, I
But
just
like,
mean
yeah,
somebody,
right, yeah.
come on in,
Yeah.
this question isn't appropriate. They're smart enough to say that without us having to.
I wouldn't mind doing that. That's okay.
It just lets everybody in our roles do our roles without having to worry about some disruptive people.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, and what Gordon was saying about the staff, like keeping a, you know, a lid on the staff time and our time as well. The one meeting is okay, but I think sending a personal invitation maybe out to each of the presidents of each of like the Rotary Club and all those organizations, the Silver Club and everything, to get the word out. And you know, we'll add in the newspaper maybe, or in the newspaper and posters as well as online, just to get the word out. And that's all we can do. I mean, if we still only get 5 people, we can still say that we consulted the public, right? I mean, it's not our fault that they don't show up. But if they're interested, they'll come.
Yeah.
long as it's not -50.
So the direction is to schedule a budget meeting before the council meeting?
Not before the council meeting, no, as your suggestion, I think that you're right about that, I don't think it should happen before. I think what Gordon was trying to do is minimize staff commitment in the evening. But if we can do it on a separate night as per your suggestion, I think that would work best, and that 1 hour long would be good,
It would be tough, 1 hour.
1 hour and a half maybe.
I would,
Break.
I wouldn't put a. I would put a soft time limit on it myself, because it could be very positive conversations going on, and you don't wanna restrict anybody, but again, when you're vetting the questions. In between the information center and the break, that's where you'll control. Because it's not, I don't know if you're gonna allow people just to stand up with their hand up. And ask questions, or you're gonna ask them to submit questions, and then someone like Councilor Sakamoto said, kind of vet those questions. Because there may be questions there that, puts people in pecuniary conflict. For example, Councilor, we're suggesting through the capital budget to redo Renison Street. Councilor Pelche lives on Renison Street. This was put in way before he even put his name in the run. Again, it's again, what I focus on is general information to show the transparency of how decisions are made within the municipality and what they're based on, and those questions should reflect that and not personal.
I think the suggestion of information period, break, Q&A, and then everyone's done the Q&A, and then there'll probably be, I mean, most people hang around after to discuss, and if staff needs any support with that, like needs, Councilor Sakamoto taking the questions and all that kind of thing, and myself sort of facilitating, I think, just reach out to us and we'll be willing to help.
I think you'll be able to say when the meeting's done, when.
Do you want to do this before the next budget meeting? Because I would really like this capital budget passed so we can get going on the projects.
Are you guys okay with that before the next budget meeting?
What's the next budget meeting?
Well, I was hoping to have it in 2 weeks, but this will push it back probably a week.
Cause I'll be gone, I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks.
When are you back?
2 weeks Saturday. 2 weeks, last Saturday.
That gives me more time.
So.
Yeah, so as long as it's within 2 weeks, and then the following week we can meet on the budget, that sounds good. Okay,
I got one little question, Kelly, in regards to, I don't see nothing here in regards to one of the assets, I guess we acquired is the golf course.
Yeah.
How does that work? Does it cover itself or?
Golf course is self-sufficient. They do ask us from time to time for a little assistance on stuff. We gave 10,000 to help replace the roof. Remember, we own the
That's
property
right.
and the building.
Yeah.
But that committee, I meet with them at minimum quarterly. We've already discussed some of the capital projects this year. That'll all be absorbed in the operational. They're asking just for, the backhoe to be there one day, or, can we borrow a couple of the employees, because our employees are very knowledgeable and stuff when it comes to construction and stuff and rehabilitating things. Can we borrow them? So we work those into our schedules. They had a huge turnover in their executive. I believe we have a great relationship with the executive. Very, again, using the word, but it's transparency. We know what their wants and needs are, or their requirements are out there, and we do have a local business person that's very active out there. And we try to do anything we can to mitigate any costs or anything that they incur. So, yeah, no, it's if they ever brought capital, I would have it on the list. The most recent thing that we do is we have a 3-year replacement plan for our riding lawnmowers. That surplus lawnmower goes to the golf course. It's the least we can do for a group that runs itself.
they're involved with the Fall Fishing Festival now too.
Yeah.
I think they got a $5,000 dividend from them as well, which is good. Yeah, that helps with expenses and things.
Like, I think you mentioned earlier about the trail looking for a new snow machine or something.
Yes.
Couldn't that come up? Didn't they get a good chunk of money from Nextbridge in regards to the rehabilitation there of the, couldn't that come out of there? Or is that separate? How's that work?
The Rendezvous Ski Club, again, a local private business person in the Rendezvous Ski Club developed a budget to, their trails were impacted by the east-west tie.
Yeah.
And so they received an amount of money from Nextbridge to rehabilitate their trails, all volunteer, with the exception of the construction of the actual trail. But majority of it's volunteer. We're just finalizing the budget on it, but it looks like if there's money left, the township has the money technically. The Rendezvous Ski Club, once we finalize what's left, I would bring it to council and say, you know, maybe they could use it towards
Okay,
a new snow machine and that, but we're just finalizing all the expenses as we speak, actually.
yeah, that'd be, I just wondered, cause I knew they had that settlement there, and I thought they could just, they'd have the money to buy a new one, but I didn't know it had to come through us.
We're very fortunate, we have to pay the wages of the volunteers, we're way over top of
Money and-
anything. So very fortunate, I have no problem saying Rob Swainson and Chris Steele did an amazing job.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Okay. Is there anything else? Oh, scheduling of next finance meeting, item number 4A. So when Counselor Pelletier returns. Would be over, someone's on a calendar.
You have to make it sound like that.
Let's not mention where you're going, because I don't want to get jealous.
You on vacation again?
That's what happens when you're retired.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Christmas.
You don't want your tan to fade too much.
No,
Where are we here? We're over here, right?
Yeah.
So here you're coming back on from 2 Saturdays from this weekend on the 18th.
yeah.
So that would bring us to the week of the 20th. There's a council meeting on the 21st.
Perfect.
There's a library on this at 7 o'clock on the Wednesday. But the 23rd seems to be open on the Thursday if that works for staff and council.
I would prefer the 20th, so we can pass it through the council meeting the next night.
Oh, perfect. We're gonna go think of that. February 20th.
So what time would you suggest?
Day, evening, something.
I think I'm the only one that's working during the day, but I can, so just to accommodate staff and everything, I can meet in the morning. If that works for everybody, as
10 o'clock, say on the 20th?
Sure.
long as I give notice, so. Okay. All right, so if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn this meeting at 11:15 a.m. I'll